Okay, just recording that. Thank you. And the only other one was, do coaches need call it out as well, or is that just for club leaders?
It's just for club leaders and club admin. There is another course that is very similar, an anti-racism course offered by the NCAA, I think through the locker, and that is on the coach eligibility policy as highly recommended, and it will be mandatory next year.
Mhm.
So we, instead of kind of waiting till next year to require it for the admins,
Mhm.
we just added it to the admin policy this year, and the coaches will for sure have to do it next year. So you can do either one. You can do call it out, or you can do the NCAA anti-racism course.
Okay.
Those,
A couple,
either of those are acceptable.
yeah, a couple others are filing in real quick. So,
No problem.
the other ones, how will this affect 4v4 split, squad, like split squads this year? Any different from this past year?
I think we talked about that on Monday because it's not my forte.
I
Jacob,
can I
you
can
guys
answer
talked
it
about
actually.
it.
I didn't know
Yeah.
if you wanted to do it, but each 4v4 split squad does need to have someone who is like who is eligible on the staff. So if you have a head coach and an assistant coach, it's the same requirements this year, so it shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, if you have a parent helper, they'll have to make sure that they have all of these requirements as well. Just because every athlete um has the right to be with coaches and with parents that have all of this. So it's for their own safety and everything. So yeah, we
Yes,
want,
it's mandated by
yeah. So
Volleyball Canada.
if you're on the bench, if you're the coach for a team, then you do have to meet these requirements. So yeah, that's I guess the one thing. There's a couple other I'm just scrolling through now. I apologize if I shouldn't miss any, but Lisa, if you have a vulnerable sector check with another organization, can it apply to the OVA as well?
Yes, absolutely. If you have a vulnerable sector check, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It just has to be within the last 3 years. I can't look it up, so you would have to send it to me. If you were a coach last year, we already have record of viewing it and the
Mm-hmm.
record of the date. So if you're a coach last year, we shouldn't have to. But if you're a club admin and you have one from teaching or whatever else, just send me a copy and we'll put the date in our records.
Mm-hmm. And then from TN, just one more. I believe I know the answer to this, but will VC update their mandatory eligibility requirements to extend to assistant coaches as well for the upcoming year? I don't think we can speak on behalf of them, so I don't know whether they're
They
going
haven't
to
released
extend
their
it.
policy yet.
Yeah, they haven't released theirs yet, so I don't know what they're trying to do with it or if they're going to do anything. But um, all I know is so
Yeah.
for us, it's required, and then I'm not sure about nationals yet. I assume that they'll release it. If they released it on October 2nd, 2022, then I assume it'll come out probably around a similar time this year.
This year. And just to talk about VC for a little bit, and once again, we talked about this on the other day, but for people weren't here, the whole reason this kind of came down is we got an email from VC just a few weeks ago saying that in their system, it's now required that if you're registering for a PIA role, that it goes into pending until everything can be reviewed. They are not allowed to approve anyone who hasn't had their safe sport requirements approved. This is because of their being signed on with the Office of the Sport Integrity Commissioner. So it's some of the requirements of being part of the group that is signed with the OSIC. And part of it is insurance requirements. I know when we were negotiating our insurance policy this year, they threw a whole bunch of safe sport stuff at us and said, you can't get insurance unless you have all of these ABC checks in place. Some of them weren't doable, so we fought with them a little bit in terms of, that's just not practical to make sure. So we got stuff reduced a little bit, but it's just the way of the world. Insurance companies aren't going to insure people if they don't know that every single individual dealing with an athlete or a vulnerable person or in a position of authority hasn't had safe sport training, hasn't been screened, all of those things. So, it's not something that the OVA wanted to throw at so last minute, but we didn't have a lot of choice or a lot of notice either. I think Volleyball Canada forgets that Ontario starts 3 months earlier than all the other provinces. So that when they sent their notice out, I don't think they realized we had to build this in our system in just a couple of weeks. So we apologize obviously for the last minute and scramble and having everyone have to do this training, but it's the right direction. We just don't like that the timing was rushed for everyone involved. So we do apologize for that. And then in terms of the process, so when someone goes into MRS, everything is going to be exactly the same, sort of front facing, except for this little box here. So when you register for a person in authority role, you will see, I don't know if you see executive pending under the roles on the right-hand side. So I went in, I signed up as a club contact, the OVA approved me, I'm fine. I signed in as the OVA approved me, I'm fine. I just signed up as an executive, I'm still sitting as pending for my executive role. So it is a role by role thing because each role has different requirements. So every time you add a role, it's not a membership thing. Once your membership's active doesn't mean you can add any PIA role because once again, it's a role by role thing. What happens is it goes into a screen where we go in, we take a look, we check that you've got your stuff and we approve it. What we're going to do is people who are sending me stuff now, everything we have from last year for coaches is all going to be uploaded and on your profile so that when we go to check for your approval, we don't have to look in the locker. We don't have to look in my back check. It'll all be right there. And it's literally a matter of seeing it, approve. We're going to have all hands on deck, especially Friday, but basically for the next number of weeks, even throughout this weekend, we're going to have shifts morning, noon, and night all weekend because we know that the club contacts have things to do, need to get their clubs registered, need to get their coaches in. So we will have someone online basically from about 9 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. at night, keeping an eye on the pending screen and approving people right away. I can't guarantee it's going to be instantaneous, but we're going to make it as instant as possible, especially this weekend when everyone's trying to get stuff in. And then for the next few weeks, once again, we'll try and approve things. We have someone dedicated to this at our office. It's going to be their sole job for the next couple of weeks to make sure that people are approved. The last thing we want to do is put a stop in the system to keep you guys from doing what you need to do. And once you guys are in there and things are clicked off, you don't have to do it again. So next season, we'll still have to approve you. We'll probably build it into the system to have it pre-approved, those roles. But once it's ticked off in your profile and you've done it, you've done it. It's going to live in your profile. It won't go away each year. It'll stay with you forever. So this should be the most cumbersome year. And then after that, hopefully the system won't be pretty smooth. Who knows what else they'll throw at us, but that's kind of what it's going to be. So the next screen I'm going to show you just because it's something I asked for that they had put in the system and then they took out. So it may or may not be there. We're still testing. We're still not quite ready to flip the switch. But I had also asked for a screen to pop up when you pick a PIA role, because obviously, you know, there's going to be zillions of coaches out there who don't realize that they're going into a pending status. I mean, there was a story on the website, but not everyone obviously reads that stuff. So I do want a note to come up to say, and I will probably change the wording of this to say, hey, by the way, you're going to get full access, but we need to review your role first. So right now, I just have to have this added back. So you'll see the pending on your role on your own home screen. And then once you add a PIA role, you should also get this pop up before you return back to your home screen. Any questions popping up on that, Jacob?
Yes, sorry, a couple.
Yeah.
Do you, just going back a little bit here. This all has to do with uploading to MRS, so we can get all of it kind of here. Police checks, can people upload them directly to their profile on MRS, or do we have to send it?
No, because we have to see it.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we can't just accept a date in your profile.
Okay. So where do they get emailed?
There's a new email. It's pia@ontariovolleyball.org. And that's the best place to put it because it'll go into a queue for the person who is responsible for making sure all of this happens quickly. But you can always send it to info@, and Mulaney will make sure that it gets where it's going, or you can send it to me. But I would prefer to go through the PIA email, which also is, I get a copy of all of those as well.
Okay.
So PIA@ontariovolleyball.org.
And
And we
any
can put that in the FAQ.
and any police check that we already have on record, we already know of, so we don't need to worry
Yeah.
about anyone. All our
Yeah,
return
exactly.
coaches
And
shouldn't be a problem.
if you were done in my back check, I've also done a lookup to my back check as of yesterday or the day before, and I've actually populated in my upload file all of the, the dates from my back check. So
Now,
it's just if it was done with a third party, you would need to send it to us.
okay. Continuing on uploads.
Mm-hmm.
All of the different trainings for
Mm-hmm.
coaches.
Yep.
Does any of that need to be uploaded, or is that
We're doing it all.
okay?
Yeah.
So that'll all be looked up from new. Again, all returning coaches should have all of it, unless you're an
Yeah,
assistant coach that needs to do a couple extra things. But
exactly. So
all returning head coaches should be fully good.
yeah, we have a spreadsheet from last year that we used when for coach eligibility for OCs, and it already has a record. So everything has already been pre-looked up in the locker and noted on the spreadsheet. So we already know who's done
Perfect.
what.
Last one, just for club leaders, the call it out
Mm-hmm.
certificate. I assume that also is getting emailed, or is that
Yeah,
yeah,
emailed. Unfortunately, there's no way to look that up. So
okay,
club leaders and everyone have been sending them to me, and I just been making a note in the upload file when
okay.
I've seen it.
And it's all going to PIA at
Yep.
ontariovolleyball.org. I'll
Yes,
add
please.
that into the Q&A at the document that we make. So that'll all go on our website as well. And
Okay.
so that'll be good. That is it for this strain of questions.
So far, so um, okay, and this is just, general reminder stuff in terms of MRS that we do need to make sure we get all athletes in MRS prior to going on the court for a tryout. Once again, these are insurance things, but it's mostly about the waiver and Rowan's Law concussion policy. We are mandated by the government of Ontario to have people attest that they've reviewed all the concussion safety documents prior to them being members, prior to them being covered by our insurance. So that is why it's so important to make sure people are registered in MRS before they even kind of show up in your gym. It is the responsibility of the clubs to verify that they have a membership prior to them participating in tryouts. I know this is cumbersome because obviously you don't have access to MRS to look up members, but if they can just pull up on their phone a copy of their receipt. I'm not sure how you've done it historically, but that's probably the easiest way to do it, of their MRS receipt, just to show you when they show up to tryouts. So the club information form, this is something that was supposed to be added. So I have it in here in case we get it done, but because we got thrown the curveball from Volleyball Canada about the other pending status stuff, the development hasn't been done. But I just in case we get it done before we go live, I want to go over it. Because this is a free form to fill out, there's often inconsistencies between what's on this form and what's on people's member profiles in MRS in terms of, they'll be listed as executive on the club information form, but they won't have an executive role. With all the new safe sport stuff, we kind of need those things to be holding hands. So we are going to make a change to the returning club form where you have to add a member. So when you're adding executive, you will search a name or an email, and then you'll add that person if they're an active member to the returning club form. So once again, because you can't add them until they're active, that means their club leader eligibility should be done to be added to the returning club form. I'm thinking we may not make it to be live for this year. I would rather not mess with the system, but it's coming. So if it's not here this year, it'll be here next year. But the one thing I do want to make sure that is very important is this next point about the attestations on the individual and the returning club form. So at the bottom, there's an attestation saying, as a representative of the club, I agree to such. The club is following policy, the club is following screening. We've had instances in the past where a club contact has signed the president's name. Which of course we know because only the club contact can fill out the form. The form has to be signed by the person who is completing the form. So if you're not comfortable signing on behalf of the club, then ask your president to get a club contact role and fill out the form themselves. but it has to be signed by the individual who's completing the form. You cannot sign it on someone else's behalf. That being said, we also need those attestations signed off by the club executives. So if the club contact fills out the form and says, I guarantee the club is following these policies. Once again, with all of the insurance stuff we're stuck with right now and safe sport, we will also need a document signed by each club executive to say, as a club executive, I guarantee or attest that we will be following these policies. We haven't designed that document yet. We're in the process of designing what that attestation document will look like that will be emailed to club executives to sign off on, but it's going to be very similar to what the attestations that are on the club information form. We're just looking at some of the documents that other sports use to make sure we're not missing anything. So that's kind of the new thing. So these last 2 points, whether the changes happen in MRS or not, those last 2 points will still be completely required and viable in whatever version of the system we have. So now the club admin checklist makes a little more sense after kind of going through what needs to be done. So August 31st, verifying coaches' eligibility prior to them registering in MRS. Once again, if they were a coach coaching at OCs last year, you're good. It's only new coaches that you'll have to make sure that they have their stuff in. And the biggest thing is to make sure it gets to us. So if you have a new coach, make sure that they email their NCCP number and their police record check and their making headway certificate. Call it out. Same thing by August 31st, remind club executives to complete the requirements. And once again, I do apologize for the short timeline. It's a lot to ask. I totally understand it. I know that some clubs are scrambling and saying, my president can't do it, so and so will be president on the sheet until they can do it. Like it's going to be a bit of a scramble. We understand that. So whatever workaround there needs to be, but you cannot register your club in the system until at least the club contact has completed their requirements and you have a person that you can put down as an executive on the club information form. By August 31st, remind coaches to register an MRS right away. Once again, they don't have to register right away, but they can't be added to a team until then, and they shouldn't be going on the court or conducting any volleyball activities until they're registered. So if your tryouts don't start till the 8th, I don't know the policy, sorry, then they just need to go in by the 8th or before they get on the court. But we're just letting you know that September 1st, the switch is being flipped and everyone can do what they need to do starting September 1st. And then September 1st, register your club. So first thing you're going to go in is purchase your club contact roll like you're used to doing. Wait, hopefully 5 minutes and we'll approve you. And then you can go in and do your returning club form. Once again, your executives should be registered before you do that form. September 1st, same thing. Re-signed athletes can be added to your teams. You can start creating teams, all of those things starting September 1st. And then September 18th, your signed athletes, once the tryout window is closed, should be going and you should upgrade them to whatever membership they require. So if everyone goes in as a tryout player, please make sure that once they are assigned as athletes, that you go in and you upgrade their memberships to the level that is required to compete. Yes, that is those things. So I just wanted to go over that because the club admin checklist was sent out a while back, but now that we've talked about kind of why we have set those deadlines, made those comments, I wanted to go through the checklist again. Other than that, MRS is the same as last year. I know we all have our pain points with it, but if you have any questions or problems with MRS this year registering, Eleni will be all hands on deck answering those questions, and she will have the full support of the staff for any issues that she can't solve on her own. But she's been doing it for a bit, and I trust her. And the only other thing I'm going to say is, if you don't know already, we are issuing certificates of insurance now. We have been approved by our insurance policy to do that, I think, as of last week. So if you need a COI, make sure you get it to Melanie as soon as possible so she can get all of those completed before she gets smacked in the face next week with MRS stuff. All right, questions?
I had a couple here for you.
Sure.
So just just re-emphasizing, MRS resets September 1st. So any info that goes in before is gone. So in terms of like,
Basically.
if you were to add a coach in right now, it doesn't count towards your 2023-24 season.
Exactly. Yeah.
So wait
Please
till
do not
after.
purchase any. Please do not purchase any memberships.
Don't purchase memberships. Don't have athletes register or anything for as tryout
Yeah.
players prior to September 1st because it won't
Exactly.
do anything with that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple other ones. T and Derek mentioned to me. Yeah, you still have to go for registering for tournaments. It's still one at a time. There's no way to
Mhm.
mass register. I
Yeah.
apologize for that. I know it's very tedious, but that's
And
still
we've talked to them about it, and there's been some reasons why they've suggested that it's not something that
yeah.
works great these days.
Yeah. I know it's
But
very tedious, but yeah, that's still the reality for MRS. For that, is there a deadline to registering coaches?
before they're on the court, they need to be members. If
Exactly.
anything happens, the club is liable.
Mhm.
So, and we've got the lawsuits. We've got where they're like, oh shoot, this coach wasn't registered, or shoot, this club executive wasn't registered. Now we've got a lawsuit where it's like our insurance won't cover.
Mm-hmm. Who do we contact for certificates of insurance again?
Mulaney. So
Mullaney.
it's
Yeah.
MANDRADE at ontariovolleyball.org, or I think is it insurance at ontariovolleyball.org?
Yeah. I'll just type both of the emails in the chat, but then I'll also include it in our FAQ. Afterwards, ontariovolleyball.org. Perfect. There's a couple. Um, Darlene says, do they only have to register as a volunteer before teams start? Or do they have to be coaches?
And I should be registered as a coach. Volunteers aren't considered. You have to be a paid membership to be covered by insurance. Volunteers are covered if they're volunteers. They're true volunteers.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry, my dual monitor is glitching out, so
Mhm.
okay, there we go. I'm back. Um hmm, I believe that's it for major questions. I'm gonna see. Hmm,
I just see
yeah.
something popping up from Liz. What I've noticed in stuff is, yeah, the referees were asked to do the call it out. So if you're a referee and a coach, you've already got everything.
Mhm. With regards to Becky, just saying that there's some outstanding requirements found with OCs. So in the past, when we didn't have the approval to MR, like a approval feature of MRS, there'd be sometimes just the odd coach that wouldn't get caught with our initial audit and such.
Mhm.
But so this is one of the good things about the new version of MRS is that we can make sure that every single coach and every single executive has everything immediately, so we can get it done. So that's what we're really excited about for that. And then, oh yeah, sorry, Tian, I meant to ask that earlier. So thanks for reminding me. Apologize to whoever asked the question earlier. Parents doing line and scoring do not need to be required. Are not required
No,
in MRS as volunteers.
no, yeah, because they don't have any, yeah, position of authority. They're not guiding athletes or coaching athletes.
As of now, I think that is everything.
Do it, shut it
Oh,
down,
oh,
quick.
oh,
No.
oh, no, no, too late, too late. Amanda got in. Sorry. Um, if we practice at two different school boards, can we submit two requests for COI? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe you can include it on the same form as well from last year. You can put additional school boards on that form when
Yeah.
you're submitting, so it
Yeah.
should be fairly easy to do.
It's nice actually that I was just gonna say our insurance company gave us access to the portal last year, so we actually generate the COIs ourselves.
Mhm.
So Mulaney has a little more leeway with what you send her to figure out what you need.
Mhm. Darlene, do board members of a club have to pay, or are executives free in MRS?
No, they need to be full members.
Okay, so when they register as an executive, it comes at a charge.
Yeah, they should. That's always been the case.
Okay.
Per our membership policy and our bylaws, all of that. It just
Okay.
doesn't happen, and it needs to, unfortunately.
Okay. If we wanted to do exhibition tournaments, do we need a separate COI, or can we include it in the main COI request?
It doesn't really matter. So the COI is really at the behest of the facility. If the facility wants one or needs them for whatever you're doing, whether it's exhibition, whether it's practice, if a facility wants a COI for an activity that's being conducted by the club, we will issue a COI.
Yeah, we have no problem handing them out, especially now that we have access ourselves
Access,
where we
yeah.
don't need to contact them. We can just put it together very quickly.
Yeah. I
So
mean, Mulaney's drowning, but
I've been there. I know,
yeah,
I know what it's like. Yeah,
but yeah.
we'll get them out. Um,
So
Jen,
if the club has its own private insurance, and I know we throw out insurance as the requirement, et cetera, in terms of you have liability if you don't register executives, but it's also part of our membership policy and part of being an approved club of the OVA. So if you're going to be a club executive who is running a club that is dealing with youth, that is doing policy, that is doing discipline and complaints, um, you are required to be a member. And otherwise, the club is in bad standing. So we recently had an issue where, yeah, we had a complaint, and one of the executives wasn't registered, um, and the club was going to go in bad standing if the club's executive aren't on there. I mean, you're in a position of authority, and you're basically being granted, approved club status. Your executive need to be members of the OVA. It's always been the case.
wait a
The
minute.
hammer's getting bigger. That's all.
Uh, Executives, do they have to do all those courses as well then?
Yes.
So I'll wait another minute or so, just because I know people, if they have questions, are probably just
Typing
typing
away.
away. So I don't want to cut you off. Um, when do club executives need to register an MRS? Same as everyone else, I believe, September 1st.
Yeah. So technically, and I understand the kind of unrealisticness of this. So I'll give you the technical and I'll give you the technically, they should be registered when you're filling out your club form and adding them, but I understand that that's all kind of simultaneous. It's like everyone, yes, Barry, it includes board members. Um, it's kind of like saying everyone go in September 1st and do everything so that the club can be active. So I would say that as long as you have at least one executive on when you activate the club. So when you're filling out the returning club form, you have to put some club executive on there. Um, and they should be registered members as soon as humanly possible after that. And there is a note on the returning club form that says, I will keep this form updated throughout the year. So as executives are registered, or if you want to put all the executives on because you know them, then put them all on. And then as soon as humanly possible, then the directors should be on there. But once again, technically, and in terms of insurance and all those things, before any club activity commences, the executive and the board should all be members.
No. Okay.
And I know it's a lot, guys. Like I do. I know it's a lot. The world is a different place.
Jeff, August 31st. Isn't that technically still the end of last season?
If you're talking about in terms of the club checklist, I think it's more the August 31st stuff on the club checklist is a get your ducks in a row kind of tasks. Make sure everyone's kind of good to go before we go live in September 1st. And then you kind of know which coaches are ready to go and club execs.
Just preparing the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
That we all get.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. If there are any questions that come in after, we will add them to the FAQ or we will respond to them personally. You're also welcome to email me directly. One time only. Just kidding. At jhargness@ontariovolleyball.org. I also get copies of everything that's sent to the PIA at ontariovolleyball.org address. So feel free to send any questions that. Will MRS truly be ready to enter on September 1st? That's a fantastic question. I'm supposed to be on vacation this week, and I just spend all day and night going in and checking MRS. It looks pretty good. That's kind of the $1,000,000 question every
It should be. It better be.
Yeah. Everything looks pretty good. All of the functionality is there for the PIA and the approval. The only thing right now is that some of the validation stuff, another new thing we added to MRS this year was new gender categories, just to be in line with kind of what's going on there, and to be sensitive to the kind of non-conforming genders. But that required a little bit of program change in the team validation, sort of gender validation stuff. So the PIA stuff is actually all working fine. It's just a couple tweaks with the gender validation that they're working on, but I've been told, I should have the final version tomorrow. And then what we'll do is we'll flip the switch a little early in maintenance mode so that we can test a whole bunch on our own before we open the floodgates on Friday. So my fingers and toes are crossed. All I saw was I'm holding you to that, and then it like went away quickly as another question.
That's fair. That is fair. It's Amanda. So Jeff just said they may have sent some emails already, just with some extra stuff. Just wondering for timelines, just so they know that they're all ducks in a row for August 31st.
In terms of emailing?
Yeah, just like will they know if
the upload will be the last thing we do. So we're actually going to do the season switchover in maintenance mode with everyone locked out. Once the season rollover has been done and we've checked all of that, then they will do the upload because they don't want to lose any data on the season rollover, and then they'll do the upload. So as long as I have everything before August 31st, it'll probably be, sometime that day that I'll upload that file. And worst comes to worst, it'll slow us down a tiny bit. It just means we have to check the locker when we go to approve in MRS, or we have to reach out to a coach, which increases our load and slows down the amount of time that it takes to approve. So.
Melissa said, if you have coaches who are technical directors as well, do they need to be registered as an exec and a coach?
It depends on the role. I mean, you have to be registered as a coach, I think, to be added to a team as a coach. So if they're going to be added to a team, they need to be registered as coach. But the technical director executive role will have them complete all the training they need as a PIA, but it won't be all the training. I think there's the foundations is the one thing that they will need as a coach. So it kind of depends. If they're going to be coaching, then they need to do all the requirements of a coach.
It's more like in MRS, do they have to have both?
Yeah, they should have both roles.
Yeah, okay. So add both roles. I think that's what Melissa meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the main thing for me is like one of the things when I was trying to email the executives to say who was missing what, not a lot of the executives sign up in MRS with their executive role. So there's probably a lot of executives in there that just have their coach role, which means for mailing lists and information, etc. And for knowing truly who the executives are of these clubs. It doesn't cost to add the extra role. So if you're a coach, please add the executive role just so we have a better visibility of the club executives. Pretty please. We got to shut them down.
I think
technically we have 10 minutes.
Yeah. I'll give one last 20-second blip.
Yeah, no problem.
Type away as fast as you possibly can. If not, of course, you can reach out afterwards. We'll put up a Q&A afterwards, a presentation. All of it will be live on our website tomorrow. So, including a recording of this meeting too.
And your patience is much appreciated. And if you lose it on us, I get it, and I know why. But we're doing our best. So hopefully we can hold hands and get to the other side of this.